Good morning, everybody. This is Prasanna Bammigatti delivering the concept of the arrays. We'll try to see in this video what is the concept of array, the first agenda, and how do you define and declare the syntax for the single dimensional arrays and application of single dimensional arrays. First, we will try to look why we need arrays. Before we try to discuss why, we'll try to see a small example here. How do you store average marks of 20 students in a subject? That is, we have a 20 marks which has to be stored in the C program. In simple implementation, we can define 20 different variables. You can conveniently name them as M1, M2 to M20 as we have shown in the PowerPoint presentation. How to retrieve each of these variables and correlate among them, like who has scored highest in the specific subject. What do you mean by this? That is, when all the marks have been stored in M1 to M20, then I want to know what is the maximum marks scored in these 20 integer or floating or whatever the data type items you have defined for this marks M1 to M20. This becomes a very difficult here because implementation has to compare all 20, whether M1 is greater than M2 or greater than M3 or greater than M and greater than M3 and greater than M4. Then if all the elements of M2 to M20, if they are small, then M1 is highest. Similarly, if I need to say that, assume that if M3 is the highest marks, then I need to say this is the if condition, M3 greater than M1, M3 greater than M2, M3 greater than M4. Like this, we need to compare till M20. Then we can come to some conclusion that, okay, either one of them will be having the greatest value. That is, we can use if else ladder over here. Do you think that it is feasible? No, not at all, because we are having 20 variables for the comparison over here. So how if all 20 variables are stored in single address with some name called marks or M or marks of student, stud marks, whatever it is. So if this same variable holds 20 addresses or 20 values, how you can access easily all that is the highest element in all these things, access easily the one required through some means. That is, I will try to induct one index over here or maybe a pointer over here, which will try to access whatever the element I want to access from this continuous storage of the memory which has been allocated inside the system. Can we solve the earlier problem easily? If I can do so, that means if I can store all 20 values with some single variable name, and if I am able to access the different data items stored, different data items, then the problem can be solved easily. That is, select first as highest temporarily. This I am explaining the logic here. That means you try to say m1 is greater, or m of something, that is mark of something is greater over here, then go on comparing with all 19 other numbers, replacing the highest if greater than the one which is selected earlier. Means the highest number I am going to have in some other variable, max, marks, or max, whatever the variables we try to define. So now we'll come for the second part, that is how we can define the arrays then. So before defining, or how we can declare these arrays in C program, that is we have the definition of the array as it is a data structure that can store a fixed size sequential collection of elements of same type. Here please note, it is of the same type. It means if I try to define a variable, then that variable is of type, the single type, which can hold the same type of values in it. And the second important point here, what I want to emphasize is a fixed size. So arrays are not dynamic in nature, they are in a fixed size. I need to define a size of the array over here. That is what is the declaration. So the next part is how I can declare this arrays. So we have the first part, as I have mentioned, element of same type means I need to have a same data type over here. So data type occupies the first one, that is it may be integers, or it may be float, or it may be character, or it may be a double, long int, long, whatever the data types available in C, either may be a basic data types, or they may be a derived data types. The next one which I was emphasizing earlier is about the variable name over here. That is, what is that variable name we try to call over here is the array's name. That is, what is the array's name here in the earlier example, if you try to look, that is we are trying to see, we are trying to take a 20 students marks. So this 20 students marks can be used as array name, that is you can say array name as a marks. And how many students are there? There are 20 students, that is used in the size. So the rest explanation over here is whatever I delivered over here, data type, whatever the data types defined in C, array name same as of any variable declaration, and what is the size? Size is a constant number defining how many similar type of variable elements can be stored with one variable name. Just to make a clarification over here, we will try to see some examples over here. That is, we'll try to use first declaration as integer marks 20. So this integer marks 20, here the data type which I am using is integer, and variable is marks of size what? So 20. So marks can hold 20 different data items of type integer. That means marks can hold 20 integer values. Similarly, float, temperature, I'm sorry, here temp you make, temperature 15. That means this temperature is a floating point value which can hold any temperature, 28.4 to 32.1, or maybe 18.5 degrees, something like that, which you can hold over here in temperature. That is 15 such values can be held in a floating. Another important and most powerful tool, which, or rather it may be a means of how do you define a name. This was till now in case of C we have not learned how to do this. That is, what is the name? It is a continuous alphabets of some particular person. That is some combination of alphabets which we try to call it as the name. So what is this alphabets? We try to represent this alphabet in the character. So what can be its size? The name maximum it can have a 25. characters. So how each elements are stored, we'll try to see this in this one, taking one as an example, that is int marks 20. So how 20 marks have been stored over here? So I had named over here marks is some variable name with 1, 2, 3, 4 and like this 19. So this indicates that we have a 0 which will hold the first element of the array marks 0. That means if the student 1 have secured the marks of 34 out of 50, 34 will be over here in this 0. And if the marks secured by the second student is 42, then 42 will be there in the 1. So marks of 0 indicates 34 is the value of the first student's marks, 42 is the value of the second student marks, and maybe 45 may be the marks of the third student, and so on. And 20th student mark is stored in the 19th index, whatever I have mentioned over here in this particular diagram. So the following explanation, that is first element is stored in the mark 0, 20th element is stored in the mark 19. So array lies between, what is the range? It is from 0 to size minus 1. Whatever we try to define over here, this size lies between, that is the array can access this last 20th number is represented in 19th position, that is 20 minus 1, 19th position. Can we initialize the array like a variables? Yes. I will try to go fast in this. We can have integer marks 20 equal to, in the flower braces, we need to define some of the elements which we want to initialize before we take up some computations. Assume that the marks 5, 6, 8 have been, I know the 3 marks of the students out of 10, you can assume over here. So I can define mark of 20, I know the first 3 students marks, that is mark of 0 is initialized with 5, mark of 1 is initialized with 6, mark of 2 is initialized with 8, and rest all things are unknown. I initialize all those things with zeros. And if I want to initialize all the marks with 0 initially before I read all the marks, then I will try to use this as 0. Similarly, if I have only 2 students in the some tutorial or something like that, then I don't know the size, exact size, and I have some data. That data can be initialized over here. That is in the flower braces. If I mention how many numbers, the mark array size will be initialized with the mark of 2 over here. That is in the square braces, this 2 will be filled up by, it is automatically filled up at the run time, or sorry, at the compilation time, and 5 and 4 will be initialized over here. Character str3, similar example here, phb, it is p is character, h is a character, b is a character. Similarly, if I want to write a name, maybe you can say any word, hi, hi. If you want to say here, instead of p, you try to write it as h, and instead of h, you try to write it as I, and close the flower braces, and in the str, you will be having hi. So how we can do the basic operations with arrays? Reading elements for I is equal to, that is how we can do it is, reading elements I is equal to 0, I less than 20, I plus plus. So this is a for loop. It is well known to everyone. So from I is equal to 0 to 20, that means 0th element is the first index of an array. Then till 19th, less than 20 is 19th highest element over here. So less than 90 we are going to read over here. And how to read this? That is, we are having a scanf which will try to say a percentage d, and marks is a variable wherein I have defined defined the array, and I is the index which I am trying to use over here, ampersand how I had used